you sleep?
Oh, this has got to be a delirium.
A boy named Omri arrives home from school and sees that his family has planned a small party for his birthday. After they sing a birthday song for him, Omri makes a wish before blowing out the candles. His parents, Victor and Jane, then present him with a new skateboard as his birthday gift. Omri and his best friend, Patrick, look quite excited about this, and one of Omri's brothers, Adil, also gives him a branded toy. Omri thanks Adil for this, and as he admires the toy, his other brother, Gillen, places an old cupboard on the table. He says he got it for Omri, but Jane wonders why it looks old. Gillen says he just found it, and Jane asks if he washed it. Gillen says he did, and Omri looks happy as he admires the cupboard. When he notices that it's locked, he asks if Gillen found the key, but he says he didn't. Jane then tells Omri not to worry much because she has lots of keys. Patrick's mom, Lucy, is also at the party, and she asks if Jane saves keys. Jane says she actually collects them, and it's something she has been doing since she was young. While Victor then takes a look at the box, Omri and Patrick play with the skateboard inside the house. Victor sees them and suggests going outside if they want to play. As they look excited, Jane says they can't go alone, and Omri begs Adiel to come with him. Adiel immediately agrees because it's Omri's birthday, and Jane gives him a helmet for Omri.
Oh, no way.
Shortly after, Omri and Patrick sit at a skating arena to watch some other boys who are very good at skating. Patrick says he's sure he can perform just as well as the boys, and Omri believes he can too. Patrick then gives Omri a small plastic Native American toy as his birthday gift. He says he couldn't get his friend something big, and that the toy just reminded him of Omri. As Omri admires the gift, he thanks his friend for it. Much later, when Omri returns home, he and Jane look through Jane's key collection to see if she has one that can open the cupboard.
How about a horse? I can make you a horse.
After trying some of the keys that don't work, Jane sees a special one she got from her grandmother many years ago. She says it was the only thing she got from her grandmother before she died. Omri then tries the key, and the cupboard opens. As he looks inside, he asks Jane what he'll put there, and she tosses the small Native American toy to him. After Omri puts it there, he locks the cupboard, and Jane helps him place it on a drawer right in front of his bed. She then reads a book with him before he goes to bed. The next morning, when Omri wakes up, he hears a strange sound coming from the cupboard. As he goes close to it, the key gets knocked down from the keyhole. Omri looks confused, but he just picks up the key and opens the cupboard. He then notices that the Native American toy is now alive, and this leaves him shocked. When he tries to touch it to confirm that it's real, the Native American man brings out his knife and speaks a foreign language.
You don't deserve that hair!
Omri doesn't understand this, and as he takes his finger closer, the small Native American man sticks it with the knife. Omri looks shocked, and he wonders how the Native American man suddenly turned real. Almost immediately, he hears Victor calling him to come downstairs so he won't be late for school. Omri continues looking at the Native American man, but as Victor enters his room, he quickly closes the cupboard and locks it. Following this, Omri gets ready for school and leaves the house with his mom. As he keeps looking back at his room window, Jane asks if he forgot something, but he says he didn't. Later that day in class, Omri cannot wait for closing time so that he can head home to take a look at the Native American man again. As he looks anxious, he thanks Patrick for the Native American toy and says that he's great. Patrick doesn't understand this, but Omri just continues staring at the clock. Shortly after, Jane picks up Omri from school, and he looks excited to return home. When he gets there, he quickly heads to his room and opens the cupboard. However, he notices that the Native American man is back to being a toy. Omri looks disappointed by this, and he locks the cupboard and heads back downstairs.
Omri, are you okay?
That night, while the family is having dinner, Omri still looks sad about what happened earlier, and he tells his mom that he's feeling sick. Jane feels sorry for him and takes him to her room so he can sleep there. After Omri falls asleep, Victor carries him back to his room. Suddenly, Omri hears a strange sound coming from the cupboard, and he looks excited because this means that the Native American man is alive again. As he opens the cupboard, he confirms this, but the Native American man looks scared. He asks if the cupboard is magical, and Omri says he thinks so. The man then mentions that it feels like he's in a dream. Omri asks if he's a real Native American, and the man says he's Iroquois. Omri says he has heard about the tribe, and he asks if the man has always been small.
It's cool.
The Native American man says he's not small, and that Omri is the one who is big. Omri says he's just a boy, and the Native American man starts wondering if he's a peacemaker or a great spirit. Omri doesn't understand this, and he asks who the Native American man is. The man responds that his name is Little Bear, and Omri asks how he can speak English so well. Little Bear says that he and his people fought for England against France during the war in 1761. Omri looks confused, but Little Bear says he has to go back. Omri doesn't want this, and he tells Little Bear to stay a little longer. He also uses the cupboard to convert a teepee into a real hut so that Little Bear can sleep inside for the night. Little Bear initially looks scared of going inside, but Omri encourages him. After this, Omri decides to bring some of his other toys to life. However, when the toys start fighting inside the cupboard, he looks scared and quickly closes it so they can become normal again. Little Bear sees him doing this, and he realizes that the cupboard is really magical.
Did I hear somebody say something about brandy?
The next morning, Little Bear wakes Omri up and tells him to use the cupboard to make some things for him. Omri asks what he wants, and Little Bear says he'd like to get a gun. Omri says he can't give Little Bear a gun, and the Native American asks if he can magically create King George. Omri says he doesn't have any kings, and he asks if Little Bear wants anything else. Little Bear then asks how Omri makes his fire and how his wife cooks. Omri says they can't make a fire inside and that he doesn't have a wife. Omri asks if Little Bear has one, and he says she died a while ago. Omri says he's sorry about this, and as he gets out of bed to lock the door properly, Little Bear says he has decided to stay for a while. Omri looks excited and says that he'll get a bow and arrow for Little Bear. Little Bear appreciates this and says that Omri can also get him some tools.
He shot me! He shot me!
Which he can use to build a strong clan home for himself. Omri says he can get Little Bear a horse, but the Native American mentions that he prefers to walk. Suddenly, Little Bear feels the breeze from the window and looks amazed. Omri then suggests going outside the house to take a look at the surroundings. Little Bear seems interested, and Omri puts him in a small paper box and takes him outside. As Little Bear walks on the lawn, he says it's just like where he's from. After this, Omri gets him to enter the box so they can go back in. On the way, Omri decides to pick up some tools from his dad's workshop. While he's doing this, a bird attacks Little Bear inside the box, and Omri quickly helps his new friend. After they return to Omri's room, Little Bear shows Omri his injured leg and says that he needs husks to stop the bleeding. Omri then runs to the bathroom to look for husks, even though he has no idea what they look like. Almost immediately, he gets an idea and sneaks into his brother's shared room to take one of their old toy boxes. After he returns to his room, he brings out a military doctor from the box and brings him to life using the cupboard. The doctor, Tommy, looks scared because he was just at the war front.
Go catch up with your class.
But Omri says he's just having a dream. Omri also takes Tommy to meet Little Bear so he can treat the injured leg. Tommy looks shocked when he sees that Little Bear is a Native American. Little Bear also realizes that Tommy is an English soldier, and they talk about how they have a few things in common. After this, Tommy wraps a bandage around Little Bear's leg and helps him stand up properly. Omri then asks if Tommy would like to wake up from his dream. Tommy then mentions that even though things are really tough at the war front, he believes he has to go because he'll be needed there. With this, Omri carries Tommy back into the cupboard and says they might meet again soon.
I can't believe it! He really shot me!
Omri then says goodbye, and Omri closes the cupboard. Almost immediately, Jane enters the room and asks if Omri is now feeling better. Omri says he is, and Jane tells him to come down for breakfast. After she leaves the room, Omri tells Little Bear to start building the clan house with some of the things from Victor's workshop. Little Bear says he still needs some tools, and Omri says he'll get them for his friend. Suddenly, Little Bear hears Jane calling Omri, and he asks who she is. Omri says she's his mom, and Little Bear looks amazed. Omri then asks what his new friend wants for breakfast. After Little Bear says what he wants, Omri heads down to tell Jane that he doesn't want his regular breakfast. As he mentions a few odd alternatives, Jane looks shocked but eventually gives them to him. Omri then returns to his room to have breakfast with Little Bear, who thanks him for the food. Shortly after, Omri says it's time for school, and Little Bear asks what a school is. Omri says it's a place for learning, and Little Bear likes this.
I always cry.
He also tells Omri to try to learn about his ancestors. Before Omri gets ready for school, he grabs some extra tools for Little Bear, including a hatchet. Little Bear thanks him for this, and Omri says he'll miss his new friend. Later that day at school, Omri's teacher tells the students to write a story about something they find interesting. When they're done, he tells them to read the things they wrote down. After 2 students do this, the teacher calls Omri next, and he says he has a magical cupboard. He also mentions that he put a plastic Native American inside the cupboard and made him real. The teacher praises Omri for writing so well, but Patrick just stares at his friend and wonders if he's talking about the same one he got on his birthday. After the class ends, Omri heads to a section of the school showcasing Native American culture. He then grabs one of the toys and replaces it with another one. Following this, he heads home quickly and runs to his room. When he gets there, he sees that Little Bear has finished building the house. He looks excited about this and shows Little Bear the Native American toy he grabbed from school. Little Bear looks amazed and asks if Omri will keep the man.
We'll go to Yaps and buy a set. Come on.
Omri says he'll only take the man's bow and arrow before sending him back. Little Bear asks if he can watch, and Omri says it's fine. After Omri places the man inside the cupboard, he comes alive and looks scared. Omri just snatches his weapons, and as the man gets increasingly terrified, he suddenly falls and dies. Omri looks confused, but Little Bear goes closer and confirms that the man is dead. Omri cannot believe this, and he starts wondering if he's responsible for the man's death. Little Bear says they have to bury the old man, but Omri looks scared. Little Bear doesn't understand this, and he asks if people don't die in Omri's world. Omri says they do, but that no one sees them.
The smallpox.
As he then suggests sending the old man back to his world, Little Bear realizes that Omri is scared of the dead Native American. Little Bear says they can send him back, but Omri wonders if the man will now be alone in his world. Little Bear doesn't think Omri really cares about this, and he insists that the man has to be sent back. Omri then asks where Little Bear was when he brought him to life. Little Bear says he was guiding his nephew through the woods to live alone for a season and learn to be a man. He also mentions that Omri shouldn't do magic that he doesn't understand. Omri looks disappointed when he hears this, but Little Bear insists that he has to send the man back. As Victor calls Omri to come downstairs, he quickly changes the man back into a toy. He then asks if Little Bear is mad at him, but the Native American doesn't respond. When Omri gets downstairs, Victor asks about his tools. Omri lies about burying them.
Come on!
And Victor asks why he would do that. Omri doesn't know what to say, but Victor suggests going out together to buy the tools from a nearby shop. Omri says he can go alone, and Victor asks if he's sure about it. Omri says he is, and Victor gives him some cash. Almost immediately, Omri heads out to get the tools. On his way back, a bully stops him and snatches the change from him. Omri looks disappointed because he couldn't even stand up for himself, and as this adds to the terrible day he's already having, he sits down near the road and begins to cry. Shortly after, Patrick shows up with a cowboy toy and says he got it to match Omri's Native American. Lucy notices that Omri has been crying, and she just takes him home. When they get there, Omri heads up to his room and sees his brothers taking a look at Little Bear's clan house. As Omri also sees Gilon's rat in his room, he tells his brothers to leave. Adiel and Gilon seem impressed with how well the house was built, and they ask how Omri managed to do it. Omri Omri realizes that they won't leave easily, and since he doesn't want them to see Little Bear,
I feel like I haven't seen you in days.
he kicks Gillen's rat out of the room. Gillen immediately goes after it, and Adil also heads out. After this, Omri finds Little Bear hiding under his drawer. Little Bear says he had to hide when Gillen and Adil came in, and Omri says he did the right thing. Little Bear then begs Omri to send him back because he's worried that something bad might happen to him. Omri says he'll be fine, and he adds that he brought his best friend to see Little Bear. Patrick looks shocked to see Little Bear, and he asks Omri if that's the plastic Native American toy. Omri says it's him, and Patrick mentions that he wants to know how his best friend did it. Little Bear seems concerned that Omri will try to bring another toy to life, but he says he won't do that. Omri then shows Patrick the cupboard and explains that the toys are real, and they can also die. Patrick says he wants a real one, but Omri refuses to let him use the cupboard. Patrick says he'll be responsible for it, but Omri insists that they can't bring another one to life. Almost immediately,
Good night.
Night, Mom.
Victor calls Omri downstairs, and he leaves the room to give his dad the things he bought from the shop. Victor and Jane then console Omri for what happened on his way back. Omri says it's nothing serious, and as he returns to his room, he notices that Patrick has brought a cowboy and a horse to life. As the horse throws the cowboy off the drawer, Omri quickly saves him from falling to the ground. After he places the cowboy on the bed, he scolds Patrick for using the cupboard. Patrick doesn't really seem bothered, and he continues staring at the cowboy. Before he moves closer, the cowboy shoots at him, and this leaves him shocked. The bullet is too tiny to have any effect on Patrick, but Omri says they have to send the cowboy back. Patrick doesn't want this, and he asks for the cowboy's name.
Stop it, Boone. Shh. Listen to me.
The cowboy says it's Boone, and as Patrick looks amazed that he can talk, Omri insists that they have to send him back. Almost immediately, Lucy calls Patrick to come downstairs so they can head home. Patrick then begs Omri to let him keep Boone. Omri eventually agrees, but he says he'll keep Boone at his house for the night. Patrick tells Omri to bring Boone to school tomorrow, and he agrees. Before Patrick leaves, he also tells Omri not to put Boone and Little Bear together because cowboys and Native Americans don't like each other. When Boone hears this, he starts looking around and eventually sees Little Bear, who also spots him on the bed. Before Boone can shoot Little Bear, Omri grabs him and puts him inside the drawer. Little Bear then looks disappointed in Omri for bringing another toy to life, despite saying he wouldn't do that. To cheer Little Bear up, Omri takes the Native American outside to hunt a toy deer that was just brought to life.
Come back. Why won't he come?
Omri also buries the old Native American, and Little Bear looks pleased to see him doing the right thing. Later that night, Jane comes over to Omri's room to check up on him and ask if she should leave the door open. Omri says she can close it, and as she leaves, Little Bear asks if she knows about him. Omri says she doesn't, and Little Bear looks sad. As he also feels lonely, he tells Omri that he needs a wife. The next morning, when Omri wakes up, he sees Little Bear and Boone having a serious fight. He then stops the fight and tells them not to insult each other. He also mentions that he's taking Boone to school for Patrick, but Little Bear says he wants to follow them. Omri doesn't really have a choice, and he heads to school with the two of them in his fanny pack. When he gets there, Patrick looks excited and snatches the fanny pack from him. Later that day, in class, Omri cannot stop looking at the fanny pack because he wants to make sure Patrick isn't resting on it. Meanwhile, Boone and Little Bear get along quite well. Boone also looks sad after hearing that Little Bear recently lost his wife.
Let me see.
After the class ends, the teacher calls Omri aside to talk about the story he's writing for his class project. The teacher asks if Omri has done some research on Native Americans, and he says he has. Suddenly, Omri sees Patrick about to show someone the toys in the fanny pack. He then ignores the teacher and heads toward Patrick to stop him. The teacher doesn't understand this, and he asks what's going on. Omri tells Patrick that he can't be playing around with their toys because they're real people. Patrick doesn't seem to care hair, and he threatens to show the teacher what's in the fanny pack. Omri looks disappointed, and the teacher asks to see what's inside. Omri then passes a secret message to Little Bear and Boone by telling the teacher that his plastic toys are inside the fanny pack. Following this, Little Bear and Boone pretend to be toys when Patrick brings them out, and the teacher tells the boys to stop fighting.
You know, I've been thinking about settling down my own self.
After school, Omri asks his mom if Patrick can stay over at their house for the night. Jane asks Lucy if that's fine, and she says it is. Omri then shows Patrick the female Native American toy he took from inside the school. When the boys arrive home, Omri shows Little Bear the female Native American toy and says she'll be Little Bear's wife. Little Bear likes this, but as Omri turns to look at the cupboard, he doesn't see it on the drawer opposite his bed. He looks shocked and immediately heads to his brother's shared room to ask if they've seen it. Gillen asks for his rat ball, and Omri remembers that he hid it a while ago. He then goes to get the rat ball for Gillen, who tells Omri where to find the cupboard. When Omri finds it, he notices that the key is missing, and he heads up to ask Gillen about it. Gillen says he has no idea where it is, and Omri starts looking for it around the house with Patrick. Unfortunately, they're unable to find it, and this leaves Little Bear and Boone disappointed. Boone says he doesn't want to be stuck in Omri's world
Ugliest redskins ever walked the face of the earth.
because he'd like to return to where he's from in 1879, especially now that the place is developing nicely. Shortly after, the boys watch a movie with Boone and Little Bear. Interestingly, the movie has a scene in which some cowboys are killing Native Americans. While Boone looks excited, Little Bear feels sad and agitated. As he fails to control his anger, he accidentally shoots an arrow at Boone. Omri and Patrick are shocked by this, and Boone immediately goes unconscious. Omri looks scared because they don't have Tommy to help, and Little Bear regrets his actions. Almost immediately, Jane enters the room to say goodnight to the boys. She also mentions that if they hear anything under the floorboards, it's Gillen's rat. The boys look shocked, but Jane says the rat ran under there during the day, and Victor couldn't get it out despite leaving one of the floorboards open.
Nature. The two-legged.
After she leaves the room, the boys look scared that the rat might attack Little Bear and Boone, who is still unconscious. They then decide to take turns watching Little Bear and Boone. However, they fall asleep at the same time, but Little Bear stays awake to try whatever he can to make sure Boone survives. Shortly after, Omri wakes up and discovers that the key is stuck between two floorboards. As he tries to get the key, it slips and falls just out of reach for him and Patrick. Just then, Little Bear offers to go down to get the key, and Omri tells him to be careful because the rat could attack him. After a while, Little Bear manages to recover the key and fend off an attack from the rat. With this, Omri brings back Tommy to help Boone. While Tommy is helping Boone, Omri looks sad and realizes that it's time for him to let them go home. Patrick doesn't like this, but Omri believes it's the best thing to do.
Oh, what are you talking about?
Little Bear then smiles at Omri and looks happy that his friend is considering doing the right thing. After Tommy finishes treating Boone's wounds, Omri uses the cupboard to send the military doctor back to the war front. Just then, Boone wakes up and tells a joke that makes everyone laugh. Later that night, Omri tries to bring the female Native American to life, but Little Bear tells him not to take her away from her world. Omri says he doesn't want Little Bear to be alone, but the Native American says he'll have his people with him. The next day, Little Bear and Boone prepare to go to their respective worlds. Boone asks if they'll go back to the last thing they remember, but Omri says he's not sure. Boone says he hopes to return to a nice place, and he asks where Little Bear will end up. Little Bear says he'll land in the woods because he was there before with his nephew. He says that if Omri were his nephew, he'd also be getting ready to go into the woods to stay for a season. Omri says he won't mind going there, and Little Bear helps him imagine what it would be like in the woods.
Goodbye, my friendly giants.
Little Bear also says he takes Omri as his nephew, and this gets him emotional. After this, Little Bear and Boone enter the cupboard. Boone then tells Omri and Patrick not to forget him. They say they won't, and Boone tells Little Bear to look after himself. Little Bear says he will, and he wishes Boone good luck in his endeavors. Just then, Little Bear asks if his people are always regarded as great people in the history books. Omri says they are, but that things won't go well at first. Little Bear seems pleased to hear this, and he tells Omri that it's time for him to go back. Even though Omri looks sad, he still sends them back as planned, and he cries when he sees Little Bear back to being a plastic toy. Days later, at school, Omri finishes up his story and says that even though he doesn't know where Little Bear might be, he's sure that his friend will live a good life.
We go.
After Omri discovers that his cupboard can bring toys to life, he tries it with his Native American toy named Little Bear. The two of them become really good friends. But when Omri starts bringing more toys to life, he learns that they're real people who have been pulled away from their normal lives. Since it would be selfish to keep them, Omri decides to do the right thing by sending them back before they get hurt in his world.